It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jaineel Patel. I am so excited, Jaineel, that we're having this intimate conversation about what's coming up in HLS in 2022. How are you today?
Doing great, Amy. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm very excited. I know we have had some rough couple of years, and in some sense it kind of continues. But there's a lot going on in HLS industry, and I'm very excited to talk about them today.
Well, likewise, and thank you so much for being willing to do it. Would you give us just a little bit about your background and what your current role is at Simplus now?
Sure, absolutely. So I have the pleasure of providing servant leadership on anything and everything HLS at Simplus. So I head the Center of Excellence for HLS there. I come with a decade, over a decade of HLS experience that spans across several different sub-industries. At heart, I'm an engineer. My career started in engineering and then quickly started to really move towards patient experience, strategy, and really bringing value to our care. So very excited with work we do at Simplus and to share this message.
Well, I'm very excited as well to chat with you about it. And I think we've discussed this before, but my background is also in healthcare. So I started as a skilled nursing marketing director. And so kind of learned what senior care was all about. And that moved me more into like the hospital partnerships and into MedTech. And then, being at Simplus has been just a fire hose of learning and coming at HLS from a different way. So I am so excited to just understand more about what's coming down the pipeline in HLS and how we can learn from it and how we can really improve patient outcomes, mitigate financial risk, and really improve the operational efficiency as well. So let's go for it, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right. So before we dive deep, can you give us kind of an overview of what some of the major trends are?
Sure, absolutely. So, as I said, last 2 years have been very volatile when it comes to the financials aspect of HLS industry. The provider industry especially has been hit pretty hard. What we see now, people are coming out from the other direction now to really stabilize their revenue, finding other ways, introducing new programs, creative ways to actually kind of really bringing that equilibrium back in there. Additionally, we're going to start to see some process efficiency along the way as well. As you know, utilization, as you mentioned from nursing perspective, so utilization plays a very strong role, and that continues when you're introducing new programs. You are really testing that in the pilot phase, but then you start to really see how do you make these processes more efficient, especially when there is patient demand on better experience and a collaboration in a more timely manner. So we'll continue to see that. I feel AI and predictive analytics is going to start to play a pretty big role. And last but not least, we're going to continue on this journey that I feel accelerated during the pandemic, which is patient experience. And that will now become the centermost point off of which we all work from. So patient experience is going to start to formulate and present itself in many different ways across different sub-industries. So a lot of exciting things in that realm for sure.
Definitely. I'm so excited to dive into each one of these. Patient experience, as you know, is just so important right now. And it's exciting to see some of the innovations like telehealth that allows you to have that, in-person experience and access to your doctor. I remember the days when I was younger, when we would schedule out, 6 weeks in advance, like normal, with a physician, and you would arrive an hour before. And if he couldn't see you, then you'd schedule another 6 weeks later. And now people really need that on-demand help. And it's amazing what we can do with technology to provide that. Okay, so if we kind of divide into the 4 different sub-verticals of HLS, can you kind of give us a quick overview about what to expect in payer, provider, and medtech and pharma?
Absolutely. So as we talked about the broad stroke ideas in terms of patient centricity, like the experience piece of it, the revenue stabilization, and overall process efficiency, we start to see all 3 really get applied to all of the subverticals. So starting with payer, we see member experience being a very big role. So there have been introductions of many different types of programs that further enhance the member experience. The focus is starting to become more on the wellness side and value-based care. These were the concepts that were coined a few years ago and even a couple of years ago, but I feel the pandemic has actually started to make them more real. And so we have started to see that, and I feel that's going to start to continue down that trend as well. On the provider side, there are some major enhancements, as you even mentioned about the telehealth being one of them. But overall, extending and building intelligent screen time in terms of how providers can still connect with patients and maintain that experience as well in many different ways. So we start to really see the enhancements of that provider experience overall. From MedTech, the innovations is really the key. From medical versus personal monitoring, right? So medical monitoring devices versus wellness and personal monitoring devices as well. And the innovation that really kicked off on the personal side is now spilling into the medical side of innovation as well, due to that patient experience. And so we talked to some medtech industries, and they're saying that their customers are really providers, but the providers are demanding what their customers, patients, are really asking for from the experience perspective. So it's really evolving that side of the industry when it comes to innovation. Last but not least, with pharma, the pandemic obviously gave it it really presented a scenario where there was a race to the finish line in coming out with like a vaccine and then the therapeutic. So from pharma side, we do see life sciences where the speed is still part of the equation, but personalization is also now part of the equation through personalized medicine. And those two paths are going to start to converge even more so going into 2022.
I love that. Yeah. It's really interesting to see how quickly the vaccination was developed and how effective it was. And I think that is, really very well attributed to the technology that we have in place and all of the innovations that up until this point have come. I just feel very blessed that even though there's been so much that is sad and really unfortunate about the pandemic, how amazing it is that we have the medical system and the pharma in place to be able to create such an effective vaccine.
Absolutely. And that will only continue. So it's definitely exciting.
Very interesting. All right. Well, let's go back to the payer interoperability. That was a big push in 2021, right? Absolutely. And what's coming up in 2022?
So in 2022, there are a lot of deadlines now that the companies need to meet from the CMS perspective, federal deadlines, in order to make their systems interoperable, so to speak. And so the systems have been transformed, data integrations have really taken place. So all of these organizations are going to ask themselves, well, we raced to the finish line, but what next and what now? And what is it really going to do for us? As you know, with any system, just for implementing a system that doesn't necessarily just bring the change immediately, there's this aspect of the rest of the industry really kind of coming together and evolving the overall solution. What we do see, there's going to be speed and agility coming out of interoperability because of the way the patient data is going to be exchanged and sent between two entities. Either it's two payers, from payer to payer, or payer to provider, provider to payer, or even between two providers. So that is going to continue to really make the data exchange faster than it was before. So that's exciting in some sense. So what that means is if you're out skiing, say in Aspen, and God forbid, but somebody slips and falls and gets hurt, and you go to the hospital, but you happen to have a condition where your patient data is important for your treatment, and you are on several meds or you have chronic conditions, well, your providers there need to be aware of that for your treatment. And this data interoperability will allow the patient data exchange not only fast, but also safe in how it's exchanged between the two institutions. So that we will see the effects of that coming through in the industry. By having that data available, what it's also going to do is give opportunity for end-to-end automation, meaning if the patient centricity is really the key and patient experience is really the key, giving that data, having that data available will allow institutions to really see like, well, what is this data telling us? What can we make things faster? How can we actually take this data to make the experience better for the patients? And that will be done through end-to-end automation. And we will start to see some of that happening now in 2022 once the mandates now coming to full effect and the projects are coming to closure. It's also creating stronger partnerships between the institutions, from between payers and providers for this data exchange. And then one thing that I feel HLS industry has been lacking for a long time will finally get addressed is data standardization.
That would be so amazing, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
That would be the absolute unbelievable thing that could happen. I mean, that would just speed up our innovation so much to have that kind of standardization.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just as a quick example, my brother is the chief medical officer for a company that's digitizing pathology.
Oh.
So they basically will take the glass slides, they'll digitize them, and then they have an integration between the EHR and this, in the system that they have in place to automatically not just attach the slide, but fill out all the forms and provide the interpretation. But in order to do that, they have, just in dermatology alone, they have 6 major systems that they have to integrate with. And that's in one tiny sub-vertical. So when you start talking about, making this actually happen and bringing this to fruition, it's a heavy lift, but it's exciting to see it start to happen.
Absolutely.
That's really exciting. So when we talk about the payer industry, we talk about the health insurance plans, right? So is there any impact to the health insurance plans themselves?
So that's a great question, because when we talk about payer industry, we end up talking about managed services, managed care. We talk about different programs that get launched, and that's where most of the focus has been in 2021, given the pandemic. People wanted to know how they can continue down that path. But now those programs, I feel, are going to start shaping the health plans themselves. See, traditionally, overall, the health plans were created off of like statistical analysis off of the population. Right. So you take a big group of population, you analyze them, you assess the risks on that population, and then you create those plans that cater to the majority of what that standard deviation really kind of talks about, those that will really cater to the needs. What's happening now is, due to these other programs that are being launched, we're actually uncovering more specialized approaches where, we're talking about chronic care, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about all these other programs, that wellness programs to move towards value-based care. And that is in itself creating these smaller subsets of populations off of which a different level of analysis and statistical analysis that will be really observed. And that will lead to creating plans or creating these packages where you can actually select some of these other types of care models within the health plans, rather than taking one shoe that fits all, which we all know it doesn't, right? So that's really, I feel it's going to start to trend towards that path. We may start to see a spark of that a little bit in 2022. And that's why I feel it'll be interesting to kind of keep that on our horizon as well.
I think that's fantastic. And I love the fact that the health plans are considering wellness as part of their, overall options. It's easier to keep someone well than it is to try to take someone sick and get them well. My question is, do you think in 2022, we're going to add spa days to part of the wellness plan? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, I hope so. Maybe that could be one of the subsets. I don't know. It does sound...
one massage a month at Massage Envy. I mean, that's my hope. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see the deductible on that one. Yeah.
That's right. Oh, well, with all the evolution in the technology industry, right? Telemedicine, payer industry, is the provider's role changing as well?
Yes, absolutely. And we definitely saw that dramatic shift happening in 2021, and that started in 2020. The providers were not confined to the 4 walls, right? They weren't just in the hospital anymore. They entered your home through telemedicine or through home visits and through hospital at home or home care. So these concepts really started to accelerate quite a bit and have only kept going. We feel that, we will start to see flavors of those starting to kind of equalize a little bit, the utilization starting to normalize a little bit as well. I see some providers actually even testing the concept of asynchronous care, where there's this approach of patients being given the opportunity to really leverage the self-service option
Mhm.
of going in and scheduling time and going in, accessing information, and not necessarily just Googling your symptoms, but going
Mhm.
directly, similar to that, to the provider's portal to access information and treatment plans that are very catered to you and very personalized to you. So it still maintains that personalization and care, but it also extends the role of provider from being within just those four walls to being more digital and being more available and
Mhm.
more approachable and flexible. So we're going to continue to see that, and technology is going to continue to play a very strong role in that area as well.
I love that. I actually, this is a very small example, but my last eye exam was completely online on the 1-800 contacts app. They did a full eye scan on me, and I did the chart, like everything, and it was 100% self-service. And then I ordered my contacts. It was fantastic. I'd never seen anything like it before.
That's amazing. And
Yeah,
that's where we are. And I feel we're going to continue. So it's exciting time for
yeah.
us.
So, Daniel, I see this slide here that you've provided as well. Tell me more. What is network as a service?
So this is the other trend that I feel is starting to pop up a little bit. When I did a little bit of analysis on the industry and then started to see that payers are making their own network much more efficient. So the operations are more tight knit. They have better digital capabilities, but that's creating an opportunity for them to go to the providers with that network, treat that network as a service. So they can actually take the entire concept of that network and literally approach to these providers and be like, hey, listen, we are looking to actually make our patient experience better. We
Mm.
have these operations that are very streamlined. We can onboard, we can actually talk about your fee schedules, we can actually get this really easily done. So providers are actually also customers to these payers,
Wow, that's
and they're
very interesting.
onboarding them onto this network. And win-win scenario is that providers get to expand their services to other networks, but along with that, the members get, now they don't have to travel too far to actually see a provider or specialist, where the entire industry is starting to go more to specialization route. They don't have to travel far to see the specialist because the provider happens to be in a network that's just in their backyard, for example. So we're starting to see that shift happen with the network as a service as well.
What about medtech? We see lots of new gadgets. We see Apple Watch, Apple Health. We see Fitbits. We see tons of really cool gadgets coming out. Some are medical, some are more lifestyle related. How is this industry evolving overall?
Absolutely. I mean, if anything, we see, it's easy to turn around a small ship than it is to turn around a large ship, right? So
Yeah.
what's happening in the medtech industry, the small companies that are entering the market, even though they might be coming in with a med device that's more personal rather than medical, are still really impacting the landscape of the overall medtech and even how the large companies do business, which means making their manufacturing more streamlined, allowing customizations in their products, and then having the touch points for the customers and the patients along the way to let them know where in the process their product is. So that level of customization and approach and touch points, it's becoming more real now. And we see in medtech industry, especially the manufacturing side of the fence, where hey, personalization is great, but we still need to make sure that our manufacturing is becoming more and more efficient. And you
Mhm.
actually see that in medtech happening. And the entire concept of that quote to cash, or the concept of that CPQ, like which is configure product quote, from the point in time when the customer comes in, or the patient comes in, or even the provider in this case, or is the customer coming in, to the point where you actually go through the whole process, where your product's ready and it's been shipped to that provider or that patient. The entire process is getting more and more streamlined, and we're removing, if it, the waste from it, making it more efficient along the way. So that is something that's going to continue in the medtech industry, because although we have started that journey, we're far from making it perfect, and I think it's going to be ever evolving process as that overall industry starts to introduce more and more products. So once we actually go through the overall streamlined process, now the question comes in for the sales team, right? In the medtech industry, it was a very interesting time last year where because the medtech sales process is so personalized, where the medtech sales team is in front of, say, providers or they're in front of other customers, and it's so face-to-face interaction that they lost opportunity to actually be in front of them because of the pandemic and the lockdowns and the, being very distant from it. That said, because of the pandemic and home care, home health care, and managed care also gave rise to the demand of some of these medtech products as well. So where you started to see some deficiency in terms of like the demand, you also saw an uptake in that demand at the same time. What that ended up creating was a scenario where the pinch from not being in front of a provider and selling the product immediately in front of them was no longer an issue, at least temporarily, because the medtech industry was still able to do really well in terms of their sales targets. And it was a tremendous year for the medtech industry. The rest of the industry, seeing that the sales process being so personal and not being able to move there, the technology industry started to create solutions for the medtech industry, which I feel was not leveraged at that point in time because the medtech industry did not feel the pain from it yet. However, given starting off the January now, and given the Omicron and the variant and how quickly it's moving, we feel there's still an element of that 2020-ish that's starting to play out here. And where the demand was for new devices to be used in home health care will start to stabilize. And if there's no process to actually still go and sell to those providers that they were once selling to, then they will start to feel that pinch and that start to feel the pain from it. We had the solution, but the market wasn't ready for it. Now we are coming to a point in 2022 that solution is there, but market may start to now become ready, feeling the pain that will now start to come back to its original state a little bit as well. So that's where I see the virtual sales possibly playing a strong role in medtech and HLS industry, allowing the medtech industry to keep their revenue up by providing other ways to sell their products more virtually.
That's very interesting. Isn't that a great case in point about, the timing has to be right. You can have the product, but if the timing isn't quite there, then you're just a little ahead of your time. So hopefully this is the year where it all syncs up together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. All right, well, let's switch gears. Let's switch gears to life sciences. And of course, there's been that constant race for the vaccine. We hear about it every single day, and the boosters. And how are the pharma companies evolving? What can we expect to see in 2022?
Absolutely. So interestingly enough, FDA had approved the adaptive clinical trial process well before the pandemic. But pharmaceutical companies were simply still just dabbling into it. There wasn't this strong need to make things fast at that point in time. But the pandemic started to really accelerate the process quite a bit, with the race to the vaccine. And that race, I feel, continues because that race started to continue into therapeutics, where you would take the pill to really help treat your symptoms for COVID symptoms.
Sure.
And now with the new variant, I think there's going to be another race for another cocktail that will help address that variant as well. So we will continue to see that race happen. But what pharmaceutical companies did is they poured in a lot of money and capital to actually go, really go through that race and go to the finish line. But it's not a sustainable model. Anytime they need to kind of create the drug, they can't keep pouring in money. But the demand of that speed is there. They were like, hey, if you were able to make that fast, why can't you continue to keep that making that fast? So that's where the adaptive and virtual clinical trial has kind of come into play, where pharmaceutical companies needed to test the test subjects a little bit. They wanted to test the products, on the participants. But participants couldn't drive into the testing sites. So these packages were mailed to them. And the entire concept of running clinical trial was done virtually and remote. And that gave opportunity for pharmaceutical companies to now also become remote and run a process that is so tightly monitored and so tightly governed but doing it remotely was a new way of approach for them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we will continue to see this become part of the model rather than a one-time thing. And
That is really funny. Yeah. And I really think the public will demand it. It's almost like, you're a parent, I'm a parent. When your kid proves to you that they can make their bed before school, and then you're like, why don't you do it every day then? It's kind of that thing.
Right.
We know that it can be done fast now, and we're going to demand it as the public. So we've heard about patient centricity and payer, provider, medtech, but how does that patient centricity play a role in pharma as well?
Oh, absolutely. So personalization, as we talked about, kind of like plays a role in payer and medtech and also in provider, but it's playing a very strong role in medicine as well. So overall, personalized medicine, happens to be applied to oncology or pediatrics or even gene therapy. But that concept is starting to kind of take off, not just there, but even in other areas of medicine as well. The key components of personalized medicine obviously has always been focused on, say, logistics and transportation, because the sensitivity of kind of collecting part of that DNA or the genetic and making sure that it reaches the destination in a timely manner before it expires. The manufacturing piece of it to make sure getting that formulation just right, and then also kind of monitoring the treatment to make sure that the personalization or the customized medicine, I should say, or the personalized medicine that's been given to the patient, that it truly is, bringing value, right? It's actually helping them.
Right.
But now the other area that's kind of coming into place, that personalization piece, where if you notice that, if people kind of talked about, like, people who took COVID vaccine, everybody had a little bit of different treatment to it. Some actually, it worked well for them. So for others, they still caught COVID anyway. And then for others, they actually had a really bad reaction that the vaccine from the vaccine itself, that now they were even more vulnerable than they were before. And that level of personalization we'll start to see in just other aspects of medicine as well, which I feel the pharma industry is going to start to kind of talk about and really kick that process off beyond just oncology, pediatrics, and gene therapy, but into other aspects of the medicine as well, starting here in 2022. So personalization's flavor in or effect in pharma, we'll see in that personalized medicine area as well.
I'm really excited about that, because as a just as someone taking medicine, right? As a patient, you think, okay, well, this has been prescribed for me, but like it's not really working. And I think that mental health, that is so apparent, right? Where there has to be you have to try something for 6 weeks, and then you have to try something else for 6 weeks. And then there have just been recently a couple of genetic tests built to show like what your history is and the mental health drugs that might work the best for you. And I think that kind of personalization is just phenomenal. It can really speed up people's recovery really quickly. So, okay, so we've talked about kind of the 4 sub-industries. What do we think about policy in pharma? That's been a huge deal the past couple of years with COVID.
Absolutely. As we all know, like, policies impact HLS industries tremendously, right? So, definitely have to kind of touch on some policies as well. The current one that I feel is sitting on the Senate floor, that was introduced by the previous administration, was put on pause and will be up for vote in 2023. But in anticipation of that, I think the solutions will come into play this year. So that policy is the rebate rule. And what that does is actually takes the concept of rebate out of pharmaceutical drugs, right? So when you go to get your prescription, you get your rebate that you actually then go ahead and turn in. But instead of doing the rebate at all, you'll get discount directly at the counter itself, and not having to do rebate whatsoever. So the effect of that is that actually does take the pharmacy benefits manager out of the equation a little bit, because that's how they set up their model. And the PBMs then also set up the overall pharmaceutical network. The network allows the 2 things. One is availability of the drugs all around to make sure that everybody has access to the right level and right products. But additionally, because of that, it also helps kind of keep the drug prices to where perhaps it should be.
Mhm.
With removal of that, what it could potentially do is also kind of give major pharmaceutical companies to almost increase their drug prices and keep it located in certain locations as well, with no central entity really governing it, like the PBMs. So what does that mean for the other constituents? Like if you're in Medicare or Medicaid program, or some of the other programs who really need the medication based on just the statistics alone, and don't have access to it. What we're advising is that the one solution to that is to actually build your own pharmacy and formulary management system. And what that does is almost kind of replaces the PBMs, that instead of it not existing, you're actually creating that entity internally into your system, and allowing and advising your patients wherever applicable, and your members wherever necessary, to perhaps really leverage like generic drugs instead of the major pharmacy drugs, just to kind of help equalize and balance the prices and the demand of it as well. So that management of that is really the formulary management system, and that's where we feel that will come into play in the anticipation of the bill being passed in 2023. But the organizations will have to really develop the solution this year in order to be prepared for next year. So that's where I feel the formulary management will really, that conversation is going to be very heavy in this year's topics.
Absolutely. Wow, I look forward to hearing what's decided there. All right. So this COVID vaccination system, as we know, you and I know, INFOSYS, our parent company, has a really fantastic end-to-end solution for the COVID vaccination. And the pandemic still continues in 2022. We know that a lot of companies elected not to do a vaccine management solution, crossing their fingers and hoping that this would be like a 3-week thing. Remember that when we thought it was going to be over in 3 weeks? That's so sad. And so now I feel like a lot of companies are reconsidering that. Is that true?
That is absolutely true. I think a lot of companies who once thought that, hey, we just need to kind of get over this hump and pass this wave, and are literally, as you said, they're coming back to the drawing table and rethinking the entire decision. And this is a balance of different things, strategy, but also like HR policies, and then you also have wellness, and then how the payer plans get affected towards the models of for your companies. It's a multifaceted decision that basically will impact how companies will decide to institute or put in a vaccine management solution in their house. The other thing externally, if anything, this is indicating that COVID in general is not going away as quickly as we thought it was going to do. Additionally, it can also give rise to other types of issues down the road, which may require other types of either vaccination or therapeutic treatment or managed care treatment, mental health. And so having a system in-house that is flexible, again, not one size fits all, but a very flexible solution that allows you to really customize the approach of in management of vaccination, reporting and registration and enrollment, all in-house is what's going to be needed. And that's where I feel the INFOSYS' COVID vaccine solution, it being so flexible in so many different ways, can really allow organizations to really offer great service to their employees without compromising on the overall strategy for the company as well.
So finally, J. Neil, we've heard a ton about partnership today. Partnership between payer and provider, partnership between patients, partnership between pharma and data management. And so what's been the journey of this partnership, and where is it headed? And what do we need to do to tackle the 2022 challenges that are bound to come up?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel that has been the true message, right? I think the partnership, and we're all in this together. And if we did not know that, or people really felt that during the pandemic, that we really are all in this together. The overall journey began, I feel, when the HLS industry started to kind of like create their own solutions internally, only to realize that those solutions were very either fragmented, very focused towards one purpose only. So one business case, one solution solving only one particular business case. And now they're left with hundreds of different applications, trying to solve hundreds of different business cases together, and not really getting true value out of it. So they started to partner with technology partners and cloud computing, AI, and data management, all of them combined, right? So
Right.
technology partnership allowed them to really streamline and run their businesses in ways so that they could go back to focusing on what they were best at, which is patients. What we have started to see over the past year, or even before, past couple of years, is that there have been new partnerships, mergers, and acquisitions really forming. And this is within the HLS industries. So for example, pharma going and acquiring medtech industry, payer and provider formulating a different type of partnership than they had before. Life sciences actually partnering with in other ways as well. So we're starting to actually see this shift happening quite a bit, where these HLS sub-industries are coming together. But what it's not still able to do is remove some socioeconomic barriers that still exist in the pathway to care. So folks who still need attention are often still not getting. And in order to really start to tackle the bigger problem of socioeconomic barriers, HLS industry is going to have to start partnering cross industry with other industries as well, like communication, media, and technology, to really make sure that everybody has the right bandwidth and right internet connection so that they can get telehealth. So even certain neighborhoods getting internet connection and right bandwidth for telehealth to really function and be efficient and proper. That's just one example, but you will start to see that where HLS is starting to partner with public sector, manufacturing, financial sectors, and starting to really tackle some big problems that are cross industry related. At the end of the day, everybody's goal is the same, that we want to make our patient experience better, stronger, and together is where and how we will actually get there.
Better, stronger, and faster. That's a great way to end. And I feel like in 2022, I feel a surge of positivity that we will get there. We've made a lot of advances so far, and we'll just continue. So, Janiel, thank you so much for this update on the trends that are coming up in 2022. And I look forward to seeing all of these come to fruition. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Amy. Really appreciate it.